Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of the previously held meeting.
So motion.
Is there a second? I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Very good. We have a number of items that are up for public hearing this afternoon, and I will go over those rules right now. We will ask that those that wish to speak before the committee be sworn in by a representative of our law department. We can go ahead and do that now. Mr. York is here to swear in. So if you're wishing to speak to the committee, please stand and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth? Say, I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. York. So the process is this, we will conduct a public hearing at 1:30 today, right now. We'll ask those who wish to speak in favor, we'll give them 3 minutes to speak, and those who wish to speak against, we'll give them an opportunity as well to speak. And then this evening at 7 o'clock, I'll invite everyone back. If you'd like to come back at 7 o'clock, we will then repeat that process. You'll be asked to be sworn in. You'll be we'll conduct a public hearing at 7 o'clock this evening. After that 7 o'clock public hearing on each and every individual item, what we'll do is we'll then, the committee will make a recommendation to all of council in terms of either approving, disapproving, or just tabling or taking time on the proposed conditional use requests. So that's the process. So now that we've done that piece of it, let's go ahead and jump in and begin on the first item that is up for a public hearing. This is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to install signage exceeding zoning code requirements at 1650 Diagonal. Mr. Antonucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. The House of the Lord Church is requesting conditional use approval to replace 2 existing signs with new internally illuminated electronic message center, or EMC, signs. The proposed signs would replace existing signs at the intersection of South Hawkins Avenue and Diagonal Road Extension and the intersection of Frederick Boulevard and Diagonal Road Extension. Each EMC sign would measure a total of 12 feet in width by 4 feet in height for a total area of 48 square feet. The sign at the corner of South Hawkins and Diagonal would be double-sided. The sign at the intersection of Frederick and Diagonal would be single-sided, facing south toward the intersection. Petitioner states the replacement EMC signs are necessary to increase visibility from several thoroughfares and to provide safe transit to multiple facility entrances during events and services. Planning staff recognizes the desire and the need for, of this landmark church to clearly convey information to the traveling public. South Hawkins Avenue is a main arterial with a preponderance of retail uses. As such, planning staff can support the requested retail-style EMC signage at the intersection of South Hawkins and Diagonal Road. However, the planning staff recommends retention of the more residential church-style sign at the Frederick and Diagonal Road intersection. Diagonal Road serves as a logical line of demarcation between the retail uses to the south and the church and residential uses to the north, and the church campus serves as a desirable transition to residential properties to the north and west. The existing externally illuminated 30-square-foot sign adequately identifies the church as motorists are coming off the expressway. As such, planning staff and the Planning Commission recommends that any new signage at the Frederick Diagonal intersection be limited to 30 square feet with external illumination, and recommends approval subject to the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 1650 Diagonal. If you could please provide for the committee your name and address.
My name's Tom Yankovic. I'm with Ellett Sign Company at 3041 East Waterloo Road, Akron, Ohio, 44312. We're here today to ask to replace the existing freestanding signs that have been there for about 30 years. You know, that church has been there for about 36 years. the new signs have this internally illuminated header and has this electronic message center portion. But, you know, places of worship have been realizing the benefits of these signs to advertise their ministries, their classes that are starting, fellowship opportunities on a daily basis. You know, and if you're on the House of the Lord's website and you go to the calendar tab, you'll look at that tab and you'll see in the month of April 20 different events per week. This is substantial, especially when the alternative is a manual changeable copy. You're trying to change this to keep current for that week of trying to reach out to the community and grow and prosper this church that, you know, with so many church closings, it's really necessary to do. I brought a visual aid with me. I'd like to show it to you here. I think this new revised site plan is a little bit different from the one that's in your packet. It's blown out a little bit more to kind of show you how large this parcel is. It takes up the entire block. It also is encompassed on two sides of strict commercial area. The signs that we're looking at are located here, which is a single-face sign, and here, which is a double-face sign. And the exact locations where they are, just in a little different proportions. The only resident in this residentially zoned district that's affected by this is this resident here. This resident, it's owned by the church. This resident also gave us their approval for the sign. We feel that the direction to which that sign's showing, which is right in the commercial area, and also on the other corner, a digital sign makes sense for both these locations. And especially when the light is directed in towards the intersection and you have adjacent ambient light coming from the interstate, we feel that the internal illumination is very important for good visibility at that intersection, and the fact that it's single-faced, it's very good visibility from everyone around there and not reflected back to the residential area. Any other questions on this?
No, sir. We will provide an opportunity for, do you have any more comments, sir?
I do.
Okay. If you could please wrap it up.
You know, again, with this sign and the proposed digital sign, we're not asking for any more that any other retail district would enjoy. The delay in the message, the brightness has automatic dimming at night, that sort of thing, as to not cause a glare or distraction in that neighborhood. And we believe that the variance further supports the zoning resolution as it seeks to provide adequate and clear identification and advertising.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the proposed conditional use request at 1650 Diagonal?
Yes, my name is Carlton Buck. I'm an architect that's been working with the House of the Lord Church for about 30 years, and we've been involved in signage for the church in the past. And one of the things that I'd really like to bring up is the church is so involved with community events that it's so important for us to be able to change that and to notify people in the community. And if you look at if you actually come off of the expressway there at the Viodum exit, you come up to a traffic light, and this sign is on the left-hand side, which if you look that direction, you see it's clean, landscaping, well-maintained. You look the other way, you've got a gas station with all the flashing lights and that they have. So it's one side of the street's definitely commercial, the other side is not at all. And we've really done our best to keep it that way and to maintain it well. So the main reason for the sign is to let the people in the community know what's going on in the community, and that's very important to us. I did personally speak with the people that Tom Yankovich just talked about at the residential, the one residence there, and they're actually looking from their home, they're looking at the end of the sign, which they'll never see anything of it, and that's one of the things that they wanted to be assured of. And we have written a letter, asked them to sign it, and that's what Tom was showing all of you. So they're very much okay with it. They're the only residents on that side of the block. There's residences obviously all the way on the other side, and when we had the first Planning Commission meeting, we did have a proponent there from the Red Bush area that spoke how well the church has treated them over the years. So we are looking forward to having the EMC part of it and the internal illumination on both signs, and we think it's very important.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed conditional use requests?
My name is Pastor Herman Matheson. I'm one of the associate pastors at the House of the Lord and the chief operating officer. First, I just want to thank you for considering our request for what we're trying to do. We want to be an asset and not a distraction or deterrent. And our signage is going to be one not of selling a product, but offering a service. As our ministries expand, as we offer more things for the community, everybody's, believe it or not, is not on social media. Everybody doesn't have an email address. So those avenues, everybody doesn't read the newspaper, but oftentimes they will read a sign. And this signage that we're putting on both of those corners are to illuminate and let people know what the House of the Lord has to offer for them, for their children, for their families. And that is simply it. We don't mean to be a deterrent, anything negative to the community, but to be an asset. So thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you. Thanks. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request? Anyone else in favor? Anyone? Hearing none, is there anyone here wishing to speak against the proposed conditional use request at 1650 Diagonal? Anyone here wishing to speak against? Anyone? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing portion and open it up for questions. I have a couple questions. Oh, first I would, Mr. Clerk, I'll make sure you get a copy of this. There was a correspondence that we had received today at 11:55 from Mr. and Mrs. Jesse White on Red Bush. I'll make sure you get that as part of the record. All of the committee members has a copy of this. We'll make sure all council members get this as well. It's on the, I understand it's on our tablets as well. And this is against, from what I understand, but I'll let council members interpret the letter themselves. So just to let everyone know, that came in. Also, a couple quick questions for you, Mr. Antonucci. So this is, did I hear correctly, this is replacing signs already there?
Yeah, there are two signs there. This would replace a changeable copy sign on Hawkins and Diagonal. Same size, only adding the electronic message center to it. Right now it's a standard manual changeable copy sign. We're supportive, our recommendation is in support of that sign. Then there's a about 30 square foot non-illuminated sign at the corner of Frederick as you come off the expressway, Frederick Diagonal. That one is just says House of the Lord, and I think it lists the pastor's name on it. Very subdued, just a very sort of a standard what you would expect at a church in a residential district. Our recommendation is to keep that look, the 30 square foot, externally illuminated, and to only allow the EMC at the Hawkins side, and just keep the residential look at the Frederick side.
Now, the question is that, so the department is recommending disapproval on that particular sign there, or not necessarily disapproval, but you would prefer that it stay as is, or at least the
Well,
size?
our recommendation says that it's only approving the one on Hawkins, and then that the signage at Frederick and Diagonal shall be limited to 30 square feet. So that's what, and externally illuminated. So that's what the ordinance is reading at this point.
Okay, so the digital piece,
The digital
You're-
piece is fine on Hawkins, but we're
but
recommending.
not, so you're against the digital piece,
Yeah.
and you're also against the additional 18 square feet, is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
Against the size
Right.
and that piece of it
Size
as
and-
well?
Yeah, and internal
Okay.
illumination. Right.
And against the digital piece too.
Mhm.
And, which is, as was mentioned, I know that the House of the Lord, there is, and I believe that in terms of, 20 events in 30 days that is advertised there. And I know that's probably a typical time, a typical month. The church is tremendous partners in the community, but I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the exact proposal from the planning department. Thank you for that. Is there further questions? Mr. Swirsky?
Is it true that the Design Review Committee looked at this proposal?
Yes, our Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission did look at this, and that was their recommendation,
What was our recommendation?
what we presented today, the planning staff recommendation.
So your planning staff is consistent with the Design Review Committee?
That's correct.
Okay. Could you get us a copy of that at some point?
The minutes to that meeting, yes.
Okay. They didn't issue a report or anything, just sort of minutes?
Just minutes, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was able to attend the Planning Commission's meeting, and at that time, as was stated, there weren't any concerns. In fact, the one Red Bush resident came to speak in support, as was spoken of during the presentation. There aren't any this does not encroach in the residential area at all. And, out of respect for the resident that, Mr. White, that submitted his letter, I'll go speak to him, but I'd ask for those who have their pads to please pull up. Mr. White's address is 1251 Red Bush. That is on the back side of the church. It is not impacted by either one of the signs at all. After reading the letter, it seems like there may be some other issues that he may have that I'll speak to him about. But as far as the sign is concerned, gone out, looked at the site. It's in is in sync with the other signage that is just on the other side of the street. If you go to the gas station and then the other line of businesses that go down the way. And as you have mentioned and others has mentioned, the House of the Lord is a great partner, not just to West Akron, but to the city as a whole. They support a lot of our initiatives and programming, and the sign would help get those messages out. So it is my hope that we can support this in the sense of respect with the planning commission, planning committee, and the folks that do the signage thing. But as mentioned, and I'd be happy to take any member of council out there. If you go out there and see this falls in line with the signage that's already out there. And I do want to highlight again the one complaint that we have. If you look on your sign, 1251 Red Bush is on the other side. You can't see either one of the signs from where that house is located. This Mr. White's letter that came in, 1251 is on the Red Bush side, which is on, if you want to say, the north side of the church. You can't see either one of the signs. But I will go out and speak to him. But as far as I'm asking that we honor the request that's coming in from the church, so that would be, I know they're asking for it. Are they asking for an adverse report or a favorable?
Well, at this time, we won't make a report until this evening after the second public hearing at 7 o'clock, of which I'd like to invite, of course, everyone back this evening at 7 o'clock for that public hearing. After that public hearing, the committee will then make a recommendation to all of council. Okay, very good, thank you. Any further questions? I just want to make sure I understand correctly the department's recommendation that was after the commission. And that is that is not illuminated at all, or was?
It would be externally illuminated, could be spotlit. It would just be similar to what they have there now, and they've had
Right,
for
so
several
the message
years.
center is what they're really against?
At that location, at the Frederick.
Message center
Right,
at that
right.
location.
So
Good.
the recommendation
Make sure I got that right.
is the ordinance before you with the first condition, which is that it's only for the sign on South Hawkins, on the South Hawkins side.
Perfect. Thank you. Further questions or comments? Okay, very good. Hearing none. On item 2, authorizing conditional use to establish a training and research center at 815, 833 Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Oriana House proposed to utilize the 10,804 square foot church to provide for required in-service training for the majority of its employees. The upstairs of the church provides open space for large trainings, while the downstairs would be utilized as a computer training lab with breakout and meeting rooms. The church, which was built in 1920, was in very good condition and only needs some tuck pointing and minor roof repair. The detached house, which was built in 1870, would house their 6th staff research department. The house is in a state of decline, but it will need roof and exterior work. A 24 space parking lot is sited between the church and the house, and it's in good condition. A separate parking lot to the north, which is accessible from Bookdale Avenue, would be resurfaced and contain approximately 45 spaces. Current landscaping for the Carroll Street lot would be maintained. Landscaping for the lot on Bookdale Avenue would be installed. The brick-based monument sign for the church would be refaced to identify the training center. The petitioner is proposing to renovate and repurpose the 2 vacant structures, and the existing parking, landscaping, and signage will either be maintained or improved. This is consistent with Land Use and Urban Development Guide Plan goals, which is to develop retail and office business areas in a manner to not harm residential areas. The amount of off-street parking space for the proposed use meets code. The training center would only take place between 8 and 5, 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. The proposed use is a relatively low traffic generating research and training center. It will not negatively impact surrounding uses. Both Planning Commission and Planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Carroll Street for a training center?
Good afternoon, Bernie Rochford, 710 Upper Merriman, Akron 44303. I'd like to thank Mr. Antonucci and his staff for helping us with the preparation of this. Oriana House has had its administrative offices at the former Frankfelder Grade School since about 1995. Over those years, we've expanded our operations actually throughout Ohio, and our training that currently takes place there is we're basically running out of room for the number of people that we train on an annual basis, and also the facility, the administrative offices for the other administrative staff that we have. This facility, the church, is about 3/4 of a block away, so it's within walking distance of our current facility. It allows for ample parking, which has become a problem over the last few years. The church itself really works out well for large trainings as well as others, as was reported. And the house, while it's it probably would be better perhaps even to demolish it, but it's such a gem of a house. We're going to put some time and effort to maintain it I think it was 1870 or something like that. It's got beautiful woodwork and pocket doors, and I think with a little bit of effort, it'll be a very nice piece to maintain for the city. So that's really the long and short of what we're trying to do there. Like I said, we've been in the neighborhood doing similar activities since 1995, and I think we've been a good neighbor and good steward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Carroll Street? Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone? Okay, very good. Anyone wishing to speak against the conditional use request at 815, 833 Carroll? Anyone against? Anyone wishing to speak against? Hearing none, we'll now open it up to questions or comments from the committee. Any questions or comments? Okay, very good. Hearing none, again, we'll invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock, at which time, oh, Mr. Milkovich has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak in favor of this building. I'm glad and thankful that the Bethany Lutheran Church, which has been such a gem in providing such wonderful service throughout the years to the community. And I want to thank the Oriana House, who's been a great neighbor. And I'm glad to also see that they're going to revitalize the adjacent home. And I appreciate it. Respectfully ask for affirmative vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? They have been, for those on the committee, Oriana has been an outstanding neighbor in the Middlebury community, and this shows even that much more of a commitment in terms of this kind of an investment. We certainly appreciate that. Okay, with that, we'll now move on to item number 3, which is an ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish equipment rental businesses and to construct a new building at 1081 Eastwood Avenue. Mr.
Chairman, committee members, Rodney Porter is requesting permission to construct a pre-engineered metal building for an equipment rental business on this property. The structure would be set back 65 feet from the Eastwood Avenue right-of-way with a concrete driveway along the west side of the building and an asphalt paved parking area containing 10 spaces in front of the building. One of the goals of the Land Use and Development Guide Plan is to encourage the expansion and development of commercial and industrial activities in areas suited to their needs. This section of Eastwood Avenue is dominated by conditionally approved commercial and light industrial uses of a similar appearance to this request. And the addition of this commercial use should not be detrimental to the surrounding properties or the neighborhood. And both Planning Commission and Planning Staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'd like to ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Eastwood Avenue to please come forward and provide for the committee your name and address.
Good afternoon. I'm Rodney Porter, Val's Crane and Equipment Rental, 1053 Kevin Drive, Akron, Ohio, 44313. Our proposed plan is to construct a pre-engineered metal building similar to the building next door to 1081 Eastwood Avenue, with the intent on flex space possibly for equipment rental usage and basically a small office.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the proposed conditional use request at 1081 Eastwood? Anyone else in favor? Anyone? Very good. Is there anyone against the proposal at 1081 Eastwood Avenue? Anyone against? Anyone? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing portion and, of course, invite you back for 7 o'clock this evening, in which time the committee will make a recommendation to all council. With that, is there any questions or comments? Okay, very good. With that, we'll take time on the balance of the agenda. Short of any concerns, and now move into the new list of legislation. The first item is amending and or supplementing Title 15, Land Usage, and enacting Chapter 154, vacant commercial or industrial buildings of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Akron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Committee. During my travels last couple of years at Ward and Block Watch meetings, we've heard from hundreds of residents voice their concern and frustration over vacant buildings in their neighborhoods. We have at least 500 known vacant commercial industrial buildings citywide. We have large ones, we got small ones, but we have one in every neighborhood in most wards. Kind of examples are like old barbecues, Lawson stores, old bars, little mini markets, those types of things. We really do a great job and have a proven process to remove deteriorating housing through the Housing Appeals Board. Now it's time for a similar process to deal with vacant buildings. The purpose is to identify all vacant and commercial industrial buildings citywide and create a database for these structures. The primary focus will be to identify those properties that can be reoccupied or those that should be ordered demolished. With an aggressive approach, the potential to create a more vibrant and thriving Akron communities can become a reality. Some of the benefits: remove blight from various neighborhoods, reduce crime, drug abuse, hazards, and stabilize our neighborhoods, increase property values, foster economic development by assisting responsible property owners with the reoccupation and reutilization of these properties. Every property that is reoccupied means the potential for more jobs and economic growth. All registration fees generated by the VBR will be used to support the administration and the various costs associated with demolition. Property owners will be required to submit a building plan, and they can rent, sell, rehab, or do a demolition of that property with their application, thereby eliminating any doubt as to their intent. With the research we did, there's over 550 cities nationwide that do have a vacant building register program in their city. And I provided everybody a couple hours ago with this packet of information. I want to real quickly walk council through this City of Akron vacant building register. I think if you look at the second page, I think everybody will recognize that picture. That's our 355 Morgan Avenue. It's one of the more severe vacant commercial structures that we have in the City of Akron. The next page, again, benefits to the community: remove blight, reduce crime, stabilize neighborhoods, increase property values, foster economic development and safety of our city personnel and safeties. The next page, we talk about some cities in Ohio that currently already have a vacant building register program. Cincinnati, and we mentioned in there that they charge a $515 annual registration fee. Dayton charges $250 with an annual renewal fee of $50. Paynesville, their registration fee for the first year is $400, and it doubles each year to a max of $6,400. Sandusky's the same as Paynesville. We mentioned Toledo, Warren, and Youngstown also in this chart. We really took a close look at the city of Sandusky's. Sandusky started their vacant building register in 2012, and they had 115 vacant commercial structures. When we inquired in 2016 about their program, they were down to 15. And they've been reused, rehabbed. A lot of times the owners did the demolitions themselves, or the city of Sandusky did the demolition. Their registration fee in year one is $400, and the fees double each year that they don't comply to their vacant building register, with a max of $6,400. Our program, City of Akron, the registration will be due within 60 calendar days of a property becoming vacant. Annual registration fee will be $400. A late fee will be $50 per day, up to a maximum of $1,000. The next page there, the registration form requires specific information, a vacant building plan, owner and agent contact information. If the owner does not reside in Summit County or a contiguous county, they must designate an agent who does reside in Summit County, and a copy of an existing property insurance and a realtor marketing contact if applicable. On the registration, as I mentioned, they can do a few things there. They could either secure, demolish, or rehabilitate the structure. The demolition needs to begin within 30 days of approval or to be completed within 1 year. Property needs to be secured for fire safety. Any nuisance and abasement issues need to be addressed and prevented. Maintenance and exterior conditions of the building need to be maintained, and they need to provide a lighting plan also. Rehabilitation for return to lawful reoccupancy to be completed within 1 year. Under the noncompliance penalties, city administrative fines, first offense would be $100, second offense would be $500, third offense would be $1,000. The criminal, the third degree misdemeanor per violation, the commensurate fines would be $500, and the jail sentence would be 60 days. The operations, it'll be under the Department of Neighborhood Assistance. We'll have an access-only vacant building register database that we will share with the Akron Police Department, the Akron Fire Department, the Office of Integrated Development, and also the Department of Public Service through the Water Department. Department of Neighborhood Assistance staff will administer the program. Inspections will be conducted by the Superintendent of Building Inspection, and our staff for interior and exterior inspections. The nuisance compliance staff will handle anything on the exterior as far as inspections. The Director of Neighborhood Assistance can issue orders to comply when violations are determined to exist and impose administrative fines for non-compliance. We'll have a vacant commercial industrial building appeals board. That'll be 5 members appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council for staggered terms of 3 years. The board will hear appeals of orders issued by the director. The board can do the following things. They can give notice to the property owner of the hearing, order a vacant or a commercial industrial building to be repaired or demolished. Monies collected from the vacant building register, fees and administrative penalties will be used exclusively for the cost of administrating the vacant building register program and including any demolitions conducted by the vacant building and industrial building appeals board. Vacant building registry, the model inspection plan, estimated current vacant commercial industrial buildings from the 2015 Western Reserve Land Conservancy Thriving Communities Institute survey. They determined that we had 500 vacant commercial industrial properties. The city hopes to cross-reference the Thriving Communities Institute data with the Akron Fire Department's list of known vacancies, then organize a plan for inspections. The next graph, again, has come from the Thriving Communities Institute data. And if you look at the first column, it's by ward. Second column is total number of vacant structures. Third column is how many are commercial by ward. Next column is how many are industrial by ward. But then the next 2 columns are pretty interesting. What we found out doing our research, 90% of vacant industrial commercial building owners live in the state of Ohio. 10% live outside the state of Ohio. So we were real pleased. We think that will make our efforts even a little bit better as far as chances to go after them. The next 5 charts are based on structure grade of property. Obviously, blue is A, that's the best, and of course F being red, and that's not doing so great. So the next graph is vacant commercial industrial structures by ward, green being commercial, the purple being industrial. The next graph, again, kind of talks a little bit more about the out-of-state, in-state. The light tan is Ohio property owners, the red being out-of-state owners. And then the next graph here again is by condition of the structures, again from the Thriving Communities Institute data. The blue being grade A, being the best, and the tannish at the top, grade F. City's assistance in helping owners of vacant properties will promote availability to encourage reoccupancy. Potential listings available will be properties that are in compliance with the code on the city's website for future aspirations. Appropriate support from the city departments and divisions, including the Department of Integrated Development. And that concludes my part of it, and we have John York here from the Law Department who will give some brief comments on the ordinance itself.
The code is really... Thanks. The code's designed after the Akron Housing Code. It sort of mirrors the housing code as far as the way it's set up, the way the orders are enforced, the appeal process, the fine process. Registration's a little higher for commercial buildings because we believe that it's going to be more involved for the city staff to enforce this code. So I guess if there's particular questions about the code, I could answer those, but I don't really want to bore you with walking you through the whole thing.
Thank you, Mr. York. Open up for questions. There's a lot of moving parts to this, so the committee's probably going to need a little bit of time to review this, obviously, but it's a very bold and aggressive approach, and certainly appreciate neighborhood assistance and the law department. And I see the safety forces, fire department, as part of this, and that's the thing. The one aspect, not only the economic piece, but the public safety piece, I think, is going to be important that this addresses, which is pretty amazing. And those statistics from Sandusky, that's interesting as well. But with that, I simply want to open up to questions. Ms. Mobian?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Several months ago, when we talked about the demolition of the Rubble Bowl, I requested a listing of all the commercial facilities that we have. I'm assuming that this is what you're addressing here?
Correct.
Okay. Can you also provide us, before we hopefully vote on this, the list of all of the facilities you are referencing, all the commercial buildings we have, the date they were purchased, how much we purchased them for, and because that would give us an opportunity to see how long they've been on the market.
I'd just like to clarify, this is not for city-owned commercial and industrial properties. These are commercial and industrial properties located in the city owned by private property owners who are in many cases not taking care of their properties, not for properties that the city has purchased.
So if we fall in the same group where we're not taking care of buildings that we own, I think we should have that. But I did request that, and I still want that. But let me ask you this. I see the registration fee, you are going with Sandusky's $400. You're patterning this after Sandusky's. Do you know what their experience has been? It looks like they have been in the business, is this 2016?
They started 2012.
12, I see, okay. Do you know what their experience has been in terms of who are they selling the buildings to, who's registering them? And I'm assuming that they will be sold to people that are interested in purchasing these buildings and rehabbing them, or if they're not fixing them up, then there will be penalties assessed. Is that what we're doing?
The information that we received from Sandusky in 2016, they were extremely pleased with their program. A lot of the buildings were sold, rehabbed, repurposed, but quite a few owners took it upon themselves to do the demolition themselves, and then several others were demolished by the city of Sandusky. So they were very, very pleased with their success rate. And in Sandusky also, they had the sliding scale where the fees were doubled the next year that property became vacant. So year one, it was $400. In year two, if that property was still vacant, that registration fee was $800. Year three, if it was still vacant, it was $1,600, and it maxed at $6,400.
So you register every year?
Yes. And that's what helped them with their success rate. in Sandusky.
Do you know if these buildings were registered by regular citizens, business folks? What was your experience? I'm curious as to who was purchasing or registering the buildings to
We could
rehab.
try to get that information, but we just don't have that.
They didn't provide it, they wouldn't provide it, or what?
I don't know that we asked, we just wanted to talk about their program, how their program worked. They were very, generous with providing with the information, but I don't believe we asked those specific
Could you
questions.
go back and ask them that?
We
Simply
will do
because
our
I'm
best,
interested
yeah.
in, if we have average citizens that are interested in rehabbing, and they have a plan of what they would like to do, how did they secure the revenue to do it? Because, there are folks that like to get into businesses, and it'll be interesting to find out if there were opportunities for people to do that, and if they required any assistance from the city to secure any funding mechanisms or whatever.
Okay. We'll do our best to get that information
Okay.
for you.
And if you can't, let me know, because I can certainly find somebody on council there who might be willing to help as well. So, but why, I'm sorry, Mr.
no,
Chair.
no, go ahead.
Why isn't the city, the buildings that we own that are commercial buildings, why aren't they included in this?
So part of the impetus for this is obviously so that we can keep track of all the buildings that are vacant in the city. We obviously already have that information about buildings that the city owns. We're also not in the business, for the most part, of owning vacant commercial or industrial buildings. When we own them, hopefully it's normally for a short period of time. We're already doing something to rehabilitate them, sell them, demolish them. So really the goal of this program is to handle properties that are not being well cared for, that are out in the community, that have been vacant for a long time. Normally they're owned by other business entities.
So if we purchased a commercial building, we normally get rid of it by selling to somebody, or someone will come and, I know that a lot of buildings that we own have been repurposed by people that are interested in rehabbing, particularly old buildings and so forth. But you're saying that we don't currently own any commercial buildings?
Oh, no, we do. I'm saying that the purpose of this program is to handle buildings that are not already being secured, being cared for. The city does that with properties we own.
Okay.
We're a responsible property owner. Part of this is to address property owners who are not responsible.
But you can provide us the list of the
Oh,
buildings
yeah,
that
absolutely.
city
I just
owns.
wanted to be clear that this program, again,
Okay.
the funding that comes from this program is going to pay for demolitions of buildings under this program, not for the city to spend on properties the city owns.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we've seen that if we have like willing partners, we have a willing partner, at least on the residential, and I would submit to a certain extent on the commercial side with the land bank and what they've been doing of late. They're always receptive to working with us, even on the commercial side at times whenever there's a delinquency on the taxes. And so I think that's a good partnership that we've had. And the whole construction of the land bank was to expedite and try to move that process forward a little quicker. So they've been a pretty good partner on that, but I believe this will accelerate that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of this program is just to let property owners know that we care about what's happening to these properties, that we're paying attention, that we expect them to come forward with a plan to basically put this property back into productive reuse, and in short order. We're giving them a year to, come up with a plan and execute that plan. And if that means they need to sell it, that means they need to demolish it. If they're looking to rehab it, we're open to any of those options. We're just not open to the option of letting it sit fallow and be neglected.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts to this. My one concern is that this says vacant building registry. I feel more comfortable if it said nuisance building registry, because, when you talk commercial, a spot can go vacant just because it's commercial, and they could be current on their taxes, and they could be maintaining everything, but we're going to have them, fill out one of these. That's my one concern. Having had one building that sat in my ward for some almost 30 years, I can appreciate this. That building was a nuisance, and I've got another one that's a nuisance. But I can think of one that's not in my ward. Would love for it to be occupied. It's actually in President Somerville's ward, the Tops building. Nothing wrong with that building. They keep it nice. We'd love for them to put something in there. Why they don't, I don't know. That would fall under this
Yeah, so I think the goal is to cover all the properties, but obviously how they're dealt with is going to be based on how they're being maintained. So, and one thing that John mentioned at the end of the slide deck was our hope is maybe in the future that properties that are well maintained, that are in compliance with the code, but are just vacant because they lost a tenant, that the city can help promote those properties as, you know, viable retail space or viable commercial space through the website, through the Office of Integrated Development. And it helps us to give an incentive to those companies to say, yeah, you have a vacant property, we're not penalizing you, we just want to know that it's vacant, we want to have a plan so fire and other, you know, entities know how to handle the property, but also we're hoping to help you reoccupy it. And then to the other nuisance properties, we have, you know, obviously penalties and other ways we can address those properties, but we do want to know about any property that's been vacant for more than 60 days.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that if someone's being a good, I'll say good neighbor, so to speak, where they're paying their taxes, they're keeping things up, they've had a business there and it's just vacant, I can see, definitely still have them register, but I'm not so much on what if the fee is necessary for that one. Nuisance, without a doubt, especially those that are in our residential areas. And the other thing is, I would like to see if we could possibly consider, you know, if someone's taking up a square block area, a $400 registration fee compared to somebody that has a little storefront, maybe theirs needs to be a little bit more incentive, because there's more work involved with that. Something like that causes a greater challenge to the neighborhood. But thank you, I appreciate this, but that's my only concern. When I think of this, I'm thinking of those that are nuisance eyesores, because I wouldn't think. I think the Tops building is definitely outside of the norm. I would think anybody that has a building wants to get it rented out as fast as possible.
Well, and that's one of the things, I know a couple of us on council here has real estate experience. Whenever the bundle of rights, whenever you acquire property, you have the right to occupy it, you have the right to sell it, you have the right to lease it, you also have the right to do nothing at all with it. And so that's one of the things I think we need to continue that conversation in terms of those that are responsible owners. I think that was a good path to go down. Mr. Swirsky?
This is a pretty comprehensive approach with a lot of different parts to the strategy, so I'm glad that we're taking some time on it. But as a ward council person, I'm really grateful that you've identified a problem that a lot of the citizens call us about when there's a vacant building, and we often sort of respond in a reactive way. Oh, well, let's get the police to go over there, let's get the graffiti off, let's get the windows closed, let's see if we can talk to the owner, who often doesn't call us back or doesn't really care that we called them. So I really appreciate that you've moved us from a reactive kind of situation to a proactive situation where the city is going to get more control over the situation and respond in a number of ways that I think, going back to those first citizens who called people about this, I think they're going to appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Swirsky. Is there further questions or comments? Mr. Kilby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, am glad we're taking some time on this. You know, anytime we do something to limit people's property rights, I think we need to take that very serious. There's buildings in my ward that need to be tore down that are eyesores, too, like, for instance, up on North Howard, Rufus Barbecue sitting there. It's a real eyesore. People have questioned that, but on the other hand, there's old industrial buildings that some of them have just been reutilized for like growing marijuana, I guess, or they applied for that. So I'm just wondering, some of those buildings probably could be used for warehousing. But, you know, so I have a lot of concerns too. And I've been looking over the brochure. I see we're going with the Sandusky plan. I question, okay, in 2012, it was probably where everyone was in the depth of the housing crisis and commercial buildings weren't exempt. So, you know, 5, 6 years later, I think naturally things might have
taking care of themselves without even doing anything up there. We don't know that. And looking at the other cities around Ohio, Sandusky's, I don't know what their population is, maybe 40 or 50,000. The other cities that are more comparable to Akron don't have a doubling of the fee every year, which I think is going to be perceived as a money grab. I think that's excessive, doubling people's fee until it's up to $6,400 now. I don't see any of the other good-sized cities similar to Akron that do that. Sandusky looks like the only one. Well, maybe Painesville. Wait a second. Painesville's the one that's, I'm sorry. Okay, what is the Sandusky? What is, I'm looking at the chart wrong. What does Sandusky charge? They have a yearly fee?
$400 a year, and they double the fee. Our proposal is a $400 registration fee per year. We're not talking about doubling any fees for registration.
That is one way we differed from Sandusky. To Councilman Neal's point before, the registration fee is not intended to be punitive. We're not trying to put an additional burden on people just because they own vacant property. So we didn't feel the doubling of the fee was appropriate for Akron.
So we're going with the Painesville plan? Is that what we're doing?
We made our own. We're giving you some examples of different cities.
Okay, so what's Painesville got? 20,000 people, if that? I mean, that's a small city. I've been up there quite a few times.
Painesville is very similar to Sandusky as far as the fees.
Yeah, them two are similar, but we're more similar to Toledo, Warren, Youngstown, Dayton. I see Cleveland doesn't have it, but I just think these are all things we need to discuss and talk about before we vote on this, that's all.
Agreed. And yes, I was going to ask if there's anybody else, and then we'll come back. No, Mr. Kilby, well, the one thing I did want to mention, like I said, we can take a week or 2 weeks' time, what have you, and we can maybe have a work session during the week even, or next Monday, have like a work session to go through this whole thing. Or if you'd like, what you can also do is forward email to me with your expressed concerns. We'll get those answered from Mr. Valley et al., and go from there. Is there anyone else, though, wishing to make any comments? Anyone? Ms. Amobian? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Sims, I just saw your hand go up. Would you? Well, okay.
So I'd just be interested in seeing a breakdown of costs. Like a storefront is going to cost me much less, the demolition, versus a mid-size or a larger size building. So I'm trying to figure out how we get to a pool of money that we could even tear down buildings. I'm not sure how that worked in the other places, so I'd be interested to know. In the graph that you have, it doesn't really, there's not a demarcation line in terms of the sizes of the buildings, so that'd be helpful to know.
The cost of the demolition is going to vary on the square footage. If you look at page 2, 355 Morgan Avenue, I believe we got some cost estimates, and that's probably $250,000 to do that demolition of that building. A lot of these are going to be smaller square footage commercial structures, like I said, old grocery store, or old like Lawson stores and barbecues and carryouts and bars and things like that that are much smaller in the square footage. And it's all based on square footage of the building, and then you also got to do the abatement too. You have to do an abatement, and then with the Ohio EPA, you have to abate that if there's asbestos and things like that. So those
I'm
are
just
all
trying to figure out in
additional
terms
costs.
of if you get those folks who aren't as compliant as we'd like them to be, where does that money really come through? I know we talked about in the last couple of years that I don't think the land bank demolishes commercial property.
That's correct. They do residential only.
Yes.
And if they do a commercial structure, they'll partner with one of their governmental agencies or communities in the county.
So outside of, for the $250,000 estimate, is that considered like a mid-size facility?
That's probably one of our largest
One
ones.
of the larger ones? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Help me understand this. The question that Mr. Kilby asked regarding Sandusky's price structure is the same as Painesville.
Correct.
And that is the price structure you're looking at?
No, we are looking at $400 a year registration fee,
Okay,
and that's per year.
right.
Sandusky and Painesville, if you didn't comply in year one, year two, it's 800.
No, even if you are complying, they just double their fee every year your property's vacant.
So we are not looking at...
So we are not, we decided not to propose that to you, because we, again, we felt that a flat fee was more equitable, and I think, again, we can look to maybe having a tiered fee structure based on square footage. I think that, you know, would be something we could take back and say, would that make the inspection, you know, more onerous, and would there be additional costs that would justify a different fee for a larger building?
Well, on the third page, you have the model city for Akron, then you have a colon, then you have Sandusky. Is that because you are...
I think it was the most closely, we modeled Sandusky most closely, but the fee, we did not model Sandusky's fee in the respect that it doubles every year.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. As Mr. Kilby indicated, Toledo and Dayton, some of those cities, would be comparable in size to Akron. Was there a reason why we didn't consider the lower fee? Because they look like they have 200, 250 registration fee.
Well, I mean, this is our starting point that we felt comfortable with presented to city council, and that's why we need to take whatever time's necessary for council to get their questions. And
We also discussed it with, you know, departments that do the inspections and talked about how much we thought, you know, to cover our costs of doing the inspections and administering the program, and we thought $400 was...
So that was a rationale?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to propose this at this time. 1 o'clock Monday, Mr. Valley and Mr. York, Ms. Nish, and anyone, any council members, committee members, at 1 o'clock in conference room number 1, let's have a work session. And if you can't make that meeting, get your question or comments or ideas to me before then, and we'll have like a work session next Monday and kind of go through the ordinance in detail, and we'll go from there, okay? Very good. With that, is there anything else to come before the committee? I don't think we have any more legislation, and we're adjourned. Thanks.
thank you. No one's escaping. Yeah, yeah.
How are you today? Yeah, so we can answer questions like that.
I think service wants to... Non-compliant. John? John, York, let him. Yeah, non-compliance. Correct. Right. I think it's John York to answer any specific law questions. Oh, yeah, we get it all the time. If there's a vacant structure and the weeds are growing or there's trash or the windows are broken, we get them all the time. Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Yeah. Okay.
Hill. Okay, I see. They can charge 20 for Mary J. You do all right. Mary J and Jaheim would be a good $20. I was waiting for that greatest hits on Mary J. So I'm gonna buy it. I want a compilation of greatest hits. Talk to you later.
That's on the Google.
I am ready. We're going to begin the Public Service Committee meeting, and it looks to me like everyone but Councilwoman Mosley Samples is not here. So that would mean that we're all not here. Okay. There's nothing on the old agenda, but before I say that, is there a motion for the minutes from our previous meeting? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that passes. Nothing on the old agenda. And what we have coming before us today, our first new piece is a resolution declaring it necessary to improve Forest Edge Drive, Aries Way, Carriage Hill Lane, Fox Trace Trail, say that fast a few times, Fox Trace Trail, High Hampton Trail, Timberland Trail, Bent Creek Trail, Deer Ridge Run. between certain termini by paving, grading, and resurfacing and declaring an emergency. Mr. Luddle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This project is to do a total full improvement of these streets you just listed. Christine Junke's here from the engineering department. She's been working on this probably since '08, trying to get the funding. We're very proud of what she did and her team with the OPWC, the $500,000. That is a grant that we do not, it's not a loan, it's nothing we have to pay back. So it's almost half of the project. So they met with the Homeowners Association last week, explained to them how the assessment, the construction would work, and everything went well with the residents at that meeting.
Great. Good. Thank you, Christine, for all your work. Could you tell us why that took so long to get, because I think you should give us a little background here on that.
Well, a lot of things were happening there. When we first received this project back in 2008, I believe we had a petition. And now at that time, we got a lot of pushback from the residents because of the whole assessment process. Nobody likes to get that big bill in the mail stating that they've got to pay for what they think that their taxes already pay for. So we did put it off a little bit longer and decided to let the property owners know once they wanted us to come and redo their roads, they could go through our petition process and they would be assessed. And I think that has just finally come to a head. The roads in that little neighborhood back there, if you're familiar with them, have deteriorated quite a bit. And I think now we've got a lot more understanding from the folks in that neighborhood of how our system works and what we're going to be constructing versus what was originally constructed. In addition, we've gone to OPWC the past couple of years, and this project did score very well last time, but in the past I think we had other priorities of where we wanted to put that OPWC money.
So they're very fortunate this is where we have decided to place it.
Everyone seems happy, so I'm happy.
How many turned out for the meeting, would you say?
I had about 25 people there.
Okay.
It was their annual Homeowners Association meeting, so we were piggybacking on another program that they have there.
Okay, so it was a regular meeting, but you also came to discuss this. Good.
Correct.
And can you tell me, how long had it been since the roads were built, or I would imagine built? I would think this would be the first.
I believe 1994 or soon thereafter.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Anyone on the committee? No? Okay. Anyone that's not on the committee? I'll do Councilwoman Sims and then Councilman Swirsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on the, last week we had some folks come down from North Akron. You were on vacation, so you didn't get to see them, Mr. Luddle. But there were some concerns about damage that happened to property as a result of some of the construction. Do we anticipate anything from Section 5 happening from the legislation? So it says the amount of damages resulting from improvements such as favors, yada, yada, yada. Do we anticipate having to purchase any pieces of partial or none of that?
No, we don't. I mean, this is we're just removing the asphalt, putting down new base, and reconstructing the road. So we have a little bit of money in there in case something of the curb gets damaged, and we will repair any ramps, but no, we don't anticipate any extra work.
And that's right under, that's included in construction costs?
Yes.
Okay. So the other question, on the general operating funds, there was an additional $20,000 added to the budget?
Oh, I believe I know what she's talking about. Yes, the scope of this project has morphed a bit here and there. At one point, we were only doing a handful of these streets. At the time of budget, that actually included most of these streets. But this current estimate, we included also the resurfacing of High Hampton Road. That's the main spine that goes through that neighborhood. What we're imagining is with all the construction equipment going in and out of the neighborhood over the next 3 months, it's going to really tear up that road. So we want the last thing they do out there is to resurface High Hampton so that the whole neighborhood is in good condition, that we don't leave behind or we don't create a problem on High Hampton.
Thank you.
Councilman Swirsky.
Yes, first, I'd like to request that my name be added on it. This is my ward. Mr. Lovell and I met with residents, was it 2 years ago? Almost 3? 15, to discuss progress on this project, which has had a long history. And the residents have been waiting for a long time for this project to happen. And when Mr. Lovell promised that it would happen, some of them were a little bit cynical because of some of the long period before that. And of course, the problem was always trying to figure out where to get funding for this. And I really appreciate the diligence and the professional results that have accompanied this and your ability to deliver on Mr. Lovell's promise. And of course, the councilman also is glad that another part of my ward is being taken care of. And thank you so much. And I ask the committee members to please pass this.
Thank you. Did you get his name out? Is there anyone else from council? Seeing and hearing now, what is the pleasure?
Consent's fine.
Consent agenda. Okay. May I have a motion for consent? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. Our second piece to come before us is an ordinance amending and/or supplementing Title V, Public Works, Chapter 52, Garbage and Refuse, Section 52.14, Service Charge, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'll start with a little history here. In 2002, the city began its recycling program, and on our first year, we had about 18% of our customers that participated in the program. Over the next 3 years, that percentage grew to about 26%. And because the growth was slow, the city decided to establish a $2.50 credit on your trash bill if you join the recycling program. And I'm happy to say the incentive did accomplish its goal. It grew to about 67% of the customers in 2010. But since 2010, it's kind of leveled off. In the past 8 years, it's only grown to 71%. In the years since our last rate increase, which was in 2012, our costs to provide this service have increased significantly. As a result, the city must either raise revenue to meet our cost increases or significantly reduce our program. The current level of funding is not enough to accomplish equipment replacement. In addition, our trash receptacles are reaching their design limits and will need to be replaced in the coming years, which also represents a significant capital expense. The ordinance before you proposes the elimination of the recycling credit, and it also establishes an annual increase based on the municipal cost index. This increase will have a maximum. It cannot go above 50 cents a year. These increases will allow us to continue the recycling program as it currently exists and provide for the necessary capital improvements. I passed out 3 charts to you just to kind of graphically show what we're up against. The first one is the tipping fees. Our tipping fees, this is in millions of dollars, but our tipping fee per ton keeps going up year after year. We're projecting that in 2012, the last rate increase, it was $2,500,000. This year, we're projecting $3,350,000. That's a significant increase since 2012. And then the second chart shows our participation in the recycling program. You can see we had that big jump when we offered the $250, but since 2010, it's leveled off, and we're not getting the participation increases anymore. The last chart shows our labor costs in 2012, $2.95 million, and that's risen steadily over the years, and we're projecting this year it's going to be about $3.45 million. We're not asking for passage today, obviously. We want to get as many questions as we can from you and answer them as fully as we can over the next week. With that, I would turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. I'm going to put right out front here, this has nothing to do with us not recycling anymore, so that we're clear on this. We are still going to recycle. We're still going to educate on recycling. And I'm going to imagine that A lot of what we recycle is contaminated because people aren't following the rules. So we obviously need to continue our education here. Now, by doing that, by not putting out the $2.50 per can per month, there's a projected savings of $1 million, correct?
A little more than $1 million, yes.
Okay. We will still have to buy new containers and things like that.
Yeah, trucks are about $300,000 a piece, and some of ours date back to even like 1994,
Okay.
early 2000s.
So the incentive, the monetary incentive, obviously, when we look at recycling, if you look out in the future, you know it's the way to go. But the monetary incentive to do it would no longer be.
Correct.
Okay. So just so that, I mean, I'm putting it all out there so that, because I know I'm going to get calls when this goes out that we're not going to recycle anymore. And we still find it very important to recycle. But right now, for us to give an incentive boost, it doesn't look practical. Would that be?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, now I will open up to members of the committee. Councilman Fusco?
Go ahead.
No, he said you may.
Thanks. Questions? The labor cost on the third graph, does that include health?
Yes, sir.
That's
wages
direct and
health
indirect
benefits.
costs?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can you tell us a little bit about the market in terms of, obviously, and some of us have been recycling for a long time. I know a lot of times I'll be driving down the street and you look for how many blue carts there is out there. And we do, I think as a city, and I don't know where we stack up versus other similar sized cities, but I know it's not bad. If you think about 70% is good. And we got to maintain that and whatever that takes. And I know we need to do some things in terms of the bags. Sometimes people they still put them in bags, so we have to do a better job of educating on that piece. I know, and that's what many on council, we should develop a program for that. But my question is that in terms of the market itself, and I see the tipping fees, and I don't know if that's includes the recyclable piece or not, but yes. The recyclable piece is what I'm asking about, and that is the market for recyclables. Where is the market for recyclables versus where it was, say, in 2012 versus 18, or even 2002? I know that evolves and changes over time. Obviously, you recycle and you sell it in the secondary market. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the recyclable piece?
Yes, sir.
In the market.
You actually raised an interesting thing there. The Chinese are one of our major depositories for our recyclables. They have changed their guidelines on what they will accept, and it's much stricter these days, which we get about 31% contamination is what we're kind of averaging for our recyclables. And
it's easy for you to say.
Yeah, and the price of certain materials have gone way down. Glass used to be a revenue source, and now it's not. We still do fairly well with aluminum, but the contamination is probably our biggest problem. I mean, if you put a few things in your recycle can and they're not recyclable, then a lot of times those loads will be just dumped and have to be dumped at a regular landfill, which is not what we're after. We're after the clean recyclables. And so over the years, we've increased or decreased our contamination rates, but they're still kind of flat now. We need more education and get, even my house, my wife's, she asked me, can I put the pizza box in there? I'm like, no, you can't do it because it's full of grease. But a lot of people just don't understand the strict guidelines that you have to follow. She's looking at Bob.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and it would be interesting to quantify that in terms of the market itself. Like I said, that's so in essence, the market has been narrowing is what it sounds like.
Much stricter market than it used to be, so contamination is a much bigger problem than it used to be.
So therefore, the income piece is obviously reduced and narrowed as well.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Kamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, John, 2012, we've had an increase. What was that increase?
In what? Labor?
No, sanitation. Says,
Our tipping fees?
yeah.
It's about $850 million in tipping fees. $850,000 in tipping fees.
No, right here, halfway down the page, it says, the last time rates were increased. Are you saying we increased rates?
On the ordinance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or the 8th whereas. I mean, did we increase the fees? When's the last time we increased the fees?
2012.
2012. What was that dollar amount?
I can pull the actual ordinance for you, but I just looked at it the other day. I think it was $1.50 or $2 per month in 2012.
While you're looking, I'll move on. That's okay. Thank you.
I'll go see if I can pull that.
Basically, I spoke with Dan earlier. He answered a lot of my questions, so I want to thank him for his time. I actually called Robert's office, and you weren't in your office, so I called Dan, and we were able to talk for a little while. But my whole problem here is I understand we have a contamination rate of 31%. We're trying to educate folks on recycling. I think we could do more as a city. I think our residents can do more. But it's going to be hard for me to support this because, I mean, Robert's been at my meetings, Dan has been at my meetings, and there are a lot of residents that really recycle. I mean, they wash out the containers, they remove the lids, they actually wash out their cans properly. They really take recycling to the next level. I would actually sit here and support an overall increase into our sanitation fees. I know that kind of makes maybe no sense, but to me, as I sit here as a council person, I would support an overall increase to sanitation to help pay for new equipment and wages and et cetera. But it's just like we're punishing the folks that are recycling, that are going above and beyond. And I would really like an answer on, let's be serious, when's the last time we really did a citywide inspection of our recycling carts? I mean, I would like to know that answer.
Okay.
I remember years ago, what was the one lady that worked for Summit County, Kelly Kodiak? Okay, you know, and you guys would go around and inspect the carts. I mean, when's the last time we really did that as a city?
I mean, we examine the carts every week when we pick them up. We replace probably about 700 to 900 a year, and then we do a lot of lid replacements and wheel replacements. Some of our inventory is still under warranty. Some of it has dropped off, but our cans overall are in pretty good condition.
I'm talking about the surprise, I'm going to use the word surprise inspections, where you'll pick a certain neighborhood and just go out there with whatever power you have and start lifting the lids and looking at what's in these carts. I mean, that's part of our contamination rate. I think you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Yes, so we did have that program some 5 years ago. We worked with Rework. It used to be Summit County Solid Waste Authority, where they had staff members. They would come out and go to certain areas just to check and see if there was any type of non-recyclables in there. We did do that.
Right.
But just with, they've been shorthanded, we've been shorthanded to do that. What we do right now is we have our drivers, if they can visibly see a container open, and if they see anything that looks like it's some sort of non-contaminants, they will tag it and not leave it, and just leave it. That's what I meant to say. Back in 2007, before we went to the automated of the trash and recyclables, we ended up going semi-automatic with the recycle container, which meant that there was a driver and then there was a helper that would ride along, and he would go around and roll the container to the back of the truck and look in first to see if there was any contaminants. If it wasn't, we would dump it. That whole first year seemed like it worked out real well, and that's when we went to the automation to one arm program. So,
And I know, I mean, you're really liked at my ward meetings, this guy right here. He would come. Actually, I'm going to invite you guys out here in the next couple months, so heads up after this one. But you're a crowd favorite, and you speak to the folks, and they love you. And I know I drive around, and I take some photos, and I send them to you guys, and you guys jump on it when I see recyclables with 2x4s hanging out of them, sticks. And I could go on and on and on. It's just, to this, I just think we're punishing the folks that are recycling. That's going above and beyond. Some of my senior citizens that really are passionate about recycling, and I mean, I've been to their houses. I've heard them speak to you at my ward meetings, and I would support an overall, and I'm a huge advocate of the sanitation department, and you guys do a wonderful job, and I have nothing bad to say, but I would rather support an overhaul increase that would affect everyone, except for our homestead exemption folks, and then instead of taking away a $2.50 recycling fee. I'm not saying let's increase it $2.50, but at least maybe we can get halfway there with something, if it's $1.25 or something. So that's what I have to say. So
I guess
thanks.
we weren't looking at it as punishment. We were just removing an incentive that apparently doesn't make much difference anymore. But I understand fully what you mean.
No, and I'm not, well, when I look at this, and that's how I look at it. I just look at it as you have a lot of folks that take recycling very serious. I recycle. I know it's only $2.50, but I fill my containers up, and I'm sure there might be a little contamination in there because I'm not educated enough or something. I'm just being honest, but I just think we do have a lot of residents that take this very serious, and I just would rather see that savings on the folks that really work hard to fill that recycle cart up with some good, solid recyclables, and then I would rather support an overall increase. So, thanks.
Just curious, what percentage of the $1 million is actually the fees that the incentives that we give the residents?
All of it?
All of it?
Yeah, that's what we would gain if we removed the recycling credit.
That doesn't include labor costs, that kind of stuff. It's just straight up fee, what we give the incentives, $2.50 a month. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is the homestead exemption part of this?
Yes, it is. They will still receive a $2 credit on recycling.
So if you're on
and they
homestead,
would only get a 25-cent bump rather than the 50 cents.
Gotcha, understandable. And this was an incentive. And initially, whenever we rolled out this program initially, that's what this is all about.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. I just want to know, I know Ellen went in the back and came out. Did you get my answer to the increase? What it was in 2012?
Better get it straight from her.
All right.
Sorry about that. So, for people who were participating in recycling at that time, the fee went up from $17.50 per month to $19 per month.
Okay.
And for people who were not participating in recycling, it went from $19.50 to $21.50.
Okay, no, thank you, I appreciate it.
And there was also changes in the, for people who had homestead, but those were the two main rates.
All right, thanks. And real quick, like I said, I've said it a few times, as I sit here now, I oppose this, just respectfully, but I know it might not make sense, but I would rather increase it across the board and still let someone, I mean, there's a lot of pride in recycling out there, and you think your contamination rate's 31% now? I could see it going a lot higher after this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering, on the recycle program participation, how do we figure the 71%? Does that come from how many recycle bins are out there, or how many pickups there are per week, or
It's based on
average?
our recycle bins, people that have signed up to participate.
Okay, so it doesn't, yeah. When the trucks go around and they pick up a recycle bin, is there a count on that, or does that?
We have a general idea, but obviously from week to week, I don't recycle every week, you know. I have a can, but I don't recycle every week because I
Yeah.
don't fill the can.
I know,
So
yeah.
it's hit or miss on the routes of who's going to put their blue card out that day or not.
Yeah, okay. I agree somewhat with, Mr. Kamer, and we talked about this before. Basically, just removing that $2.50, you're taking it away from 71% of the people. And the other people that aren't doing anything, it doesn't cost them anything, one way or the other. So, I think maybe looking at a possible increase across the board because of non-participation and because of not participating in the program. And yeah, you aren't getting any help as far as a discount or anything, but the people that are doing that and I guess we did give that out as an incentive to get everybody into the program, but evidently we're not doing that well as far as, with a 30%, 31% contamination rate. We need to make that better, and I know Dan explained that on the phone this morning. I was in Don's office, and he said if we can get that lowered down into, mid-20s and a little bit below that, we're in fairly decent shape. So I don't know. That a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, and this way or that way. So I guess just I'm looking at it also, but maybe we can discuss it further and understand a little bit more about this, and just rather than taking the $250 off, do it in a manner to where everybody's doing something to help out with the program. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Rita Mae, my mother, who would have been 98 on May the 2nd, was a great recycler because she lived through the Depression. And when you live through the Depression, everything is valuable. Everything has a second life.
Down to bacon grease.
There
My
you
grandma.
go. Wrapping paper, we washed off paper plates and dried them and used them again. So, but I also, listening to my colleagues, I can see that this is probably going to need some time.
Okay.
So is there a motion for time? Okay, and I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, this will go on time then. Is there anything else to come before this committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
I'm surprised. I gotta, that's what they call this piece. I got.
You ready, Mr. Kramer?
All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I'm going to try to get a public safety meeting to order, please. I'll give it another like 30 seconds so everybody can compose themselves.
Could be.
All right, because we are running behind. So, all right, with that, we are going to call public safety meeting to order. I believe everyone's present, myself, Keith, Swirsky, Sims, and Hope. Can I get approval of the minutes from the meeting we held last time, please? All in favor? All right, thank you. We do have 3 new pieces in front of us. Our first piece is ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract with Axon Enterprises for the purchase of tasers and taser-related equipment, declaring an emergency. We have Deputy Mayor of Public Safety with us, Charlie Brown. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. This legislation is, we want to purchase 152 tasers. Not only the tasers, but the equipment, holsters, cartridges. There's one particular piece of equipment that's kind of interesting. It's called a PPM. It's a battery where when the taser is pulled out of the holster, it activates the camera. So it is a total of $399,000 total, okay. But each of the payment schedule is just under $80,000 for the 5 years. Wow. And we have with us Captain Shanae on my left, and Captain McCosey is going to be available for the next piece of legislation as well. So if you have any questions.
Thanks. Captain, just to let my colleagues know, he was just recently promoted, so congratulations. I sent you an email. You responded, so I appreciate that. So with that, any questions, committee members? Mrs. Sims.
I sure would have liked to see a demonstration of this amazing piece of equipment that moved beyond being a taser to activate a camera. That sounds pretty significant just to bring in as a piece of legislation.
I think we can make that happen for you, so you can see it.
Could we make that happen before we pass this piece, or that
No.
takes? I mean, that's a pretty awesome piece. If that's really what it does, not to have had any exposure to it, makes me a little uncomfortable. Secondly, there's a 5-year contract, which is really, on a taser, I mean, that's pretty significant. And so, in the final part of my question, or statements, are we looking to purchase all 152 at one fell swoop, or are we buying 30 each year over the 5-year period?
You want to do that one?
It would be purchasing them all at once, which would allow us to rotate out the tasers that we have that are currently have reached the end of their useful life. There's a recommended replacement process or time frame for this equipment, and we have a little over 125 tasers that are at that state. This would replace them, plus it would enhance the number of officers that are going to be carrying tasers, and it would expand it to include not only patrol and the patrol sergeants, but also traffic, the street narcotics unit, the cops unit, the NRT, neighborhood response team, the SRO, the school officers, and our gun violence reduction team, and court security. So it also has built into that some extra ones so that we have a small stockpile for new hires, so that every officer that comes onto the department will have a taser available for them.
Captain Shanae, with all due respect, I mean, I've been a strong advocate that every police officer should have a taser, one of the lesser lethal pieces of equipment that we have on the street. So I got that. I'm with that, down with you totally. But my challenge is that this seems to be a more significant piece that's connected to our cameras. or its potential to activate the camera, and I've never even heard of such a thing. And how it works, what's its fault, what's its fail rate, nothing. I mean, that's my challenge.
Well, it's a Bluetooth connection that when the taser is removed from the holster, that it activates the body-worn camera.
My question is still the same. When we get the legislation and the rationale for wanting the tasers is it takes away, it's a less than lethal conflict resolution piece. 100% down with that, advocated from Jump Street. But when you're talking about connecting it to the activation of the cameras, it added something else to it. And so I would have liked to have heard really how this works. What's the fail rate? I mean, who else is using this? I mean, I would have liked to have known that.
Well, Councilperson Sim, I would tell you that the police department is always looking forward to utilizing the newest technology. This is a new piece of technology that they have, that Axon has. So if it is that you would like to see that, I'm sure.
The problem, here's a challenge for us, and let this not be lost on us. The reason why we have partly the body-worn cameras is because the citizenry had concerns, right? We had concerns, we responded to those concerns, we went to great lengths to make sure that we got the right kind of body-worn cameras, the whole nine. We've invested a lot of time. Now we have another added piece to this that could, again, serve as an activation for your body-worn cameras. When you remove the taser from the holster, is that what you're saying to me?
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm saying to you. The body-worn camera system is the body-worn camera system. It will always work that way, but this is another piece of technology that we're going to use that will make our service even more transparent.
With the body-worn camera having to be manually turned on, there's the human error of if you're involved in a dynamic situation that you don't have the time to stop and turn your camera on. This is helping to eliminate some of those times where the camera does not get turned on by making it automatic. Then this agreement includes warranties for the pieces of equipment. So if there is some sort of failure, Axon has to replace that and correct it. This is also something that we figure that if we did it piecemeal and just replaced 10 tasers a year or whatever the appropriate number of tasers a year is, we're still going to be having to spend an amount similar to this to make our program stay up to date. This allows for 20% of our inventory to be replaced every 5 years.
You okay?
No, because, I mean, just like you made the comparison about, you know, people forgetting to turn on the camera. I mean, even a comparison analysis about, you know, the fail rate there versus this, that would have been helpful. I mean, again, maybe it doesn't, because you guys are ingratiated in this all the time, maybe it makes a lot of sense to you, but to me, there are two very sensitive issues to me: body-worn cameras and tasers. And so now we have a nice technology piece that will do something that our tasers haven't done before, and we haven't even seen it demonstrate. That's my challenge. And so I don't know if that makes sense to you all. It certainly makes a lot of sense to me, but.
So Councilwoman Sims, if I'm hearing you correctly, you would like to see these tasers actually in action with some kind of body-worn footage?
Yeah, even if we would have brought a graphic in here to say, this is how this works, we didn't even do that. I mean, I did. I mean, when I read this legislation, I'm looking at it, okay, yeah, great. We get 100, yeah, we're finally going to get to the place we're going to have tasers for everybody and even replacements or ones for the new folks coming on board.
So moving forward is, what is it, Axon? Now, do they have anything that they can supply you folks or us in regards to video or some kind of clips?
I'm sure we could work on grabbing something like that where we could share
Okay.
a video of some sort, a YouTube video or something like that.
Yeah, that would be nice. Is that, Councilwoman Sims, is that something that satisfy you?
I mean, something more than
Okay.
what we got.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, let's see if we can move forward to, not just one, maybe 2 or 3 different scenarios or something like that that can show us, you know, when they pull out the taser, the body camera footage comes on, you know, stuff like that.
Just, when the captain talks about dynamic situation, if someone was to walk in this room right now, and I don't see either the captains have a taser on, but they pull the taser, they would not first pick up and push the button and turn the camera on.
I agree with what
Okay,
you're
all
saying,
right.
because as I sit here as a council person, I write down notes, and sometimes I forget about them, or I forget to ask a question. So that's basically like, if a individual walks through this room and your first reaction is to pull that taser, you know, how can you do everything? So I understand where you're coming from, and I understand her concerns. though.
Okay.
And I would like to see some kind of video or
We can work towards that.
something, so, okay. I still have another question, though, before I ask any other of my colleagues. With these 152, I just want to make sure every patrol officer is still out there with a taser, though?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Wait. Every lieutenants and captains don't.
Right.
Okay.
But every patrol
Yes.
officer, we've already accomplished that?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Council members, committee members, council members? Mr. Neal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During this, listening to the discussion, it brought some questions from what Councilwoman Sims was asking. And it may be in the legislation, so excuse me if I'm not reading this correctly. When you mentioned that body-worn cameras don't always turn on, and I know there's been technology about it, once you get out the car or once you pull something out of a holster, it turns it on. My question is this. What is the cost difference between a regular taser and this? And this is the point I'm getting to, because would it make more sense since they wear their body-worn cameras all the time, if there's a technology where we can retrofit our stuff to where that automatically turns on? And this is what my other question. Is the storage for the taser the same as for the body camera, or are we dealing with 2 different storage systems the way they work?
And that's going to be an IT question, but I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to clarify with Captain McCosey.
You should distinguish between the storage for the body-worn camera video and the information from the taser. The taser is data, so it's words on a page, if you will, versus the body-worn camera, that's the actual video. What we're talking about here is a trigger that's built into the tasers now, because it's normal, and it's a trigger for the body-worn camera. It sends a signal that says, hey, turn on, is what we're talking about. It's become a standard with Axon equipment that they have built the capability to have a lot of different things. You mentioned getting out of the car, turning on lights. We have ours set up so when you turn on to the second position on the lights, on the emergency lights, the cameras come on. Those are triggers that can turn on the body-worn camera if you have them set up. In this case, the taser coming out of the holster is one of those things. So it's sort of an add-on. It's not really the taser. It's really just the capability of the taser to talk to the body-worn camera and turn it on to let you know. As far as storage goes, it's the standard body-worn camera storage and the same standard data turnover from the taser to evidence.com. All that's the same. Does that answer your question, sir?
No, thank you, Mr. Neal. Any other questions, comments? Councilwoman Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the cost of the tasers is what versus the other stuff? So is there a contract with, so how is that just?
What do you mean by other?
How is that broken out? How much are the tasers?
The tasers themselves are, the 152 is $61,122.24 for the first year. Then there's an additional 23 that's built into that as to have that stockpile for hiring of new officers. So that's an additional $3,910.
So how do we get to the $399, the $400,000?
Each year is $79,999 for 5 years.
And that's for what?
That is for the tasers, the holsters, the cartridges. It's for the spares, the warranties, the training cartridges that also come with it.
So each year,
It's breaking it down by year.
So each year of the 5-year contract, there's
79,000.
79,000.
999.
Thank you, Councilwoman. No other questions or comments. Obviously, we're not going to suspend the rules on this, but if the committee does place it on a consent agenda, it'd be nice if we can try to get some of that footage or examples to us sooner than later, if that's okay, Captain.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay. So I'll let the committee decide on if they want to take time or put this on the consent agenda. If it goes on the consent agenda, someone can always pull it off next week, but I definitely would like to see some of that footage. So, committee? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so we'll put that on the consent agenda and just try to get that to us. I appreciate it. All right, moving on to number 6, authorizing the purchase agent without the formality of publicly advertising for bids to purchase up to 37 Lenovo computers, 5 docks, and 5 DVD players from Lenovo, if I pronounce that right. Lenovo. Thanks, teacher. A teacher. Lenovo. Thank you. Government and declare an emergency. Charlie's.
Okay, this is for 37 laptop computers from Lenovo. We have also requesting 5 DVD burners and 5 USB-C docks. And USB-C dock is where they actually take it's a docking station. And Cap, make sure I'm saying this correctly, where it will go, the laptop will go into the docking station and increases the mobility for those folks who are using those.
All right, thanks. Lenovo.
Lenovo.
I have to say that a few times. Lenovo computers. Any questions, committee members? Councilwoman Sims.
So there's only 5 docks?
Okay.
That's correct, only 5.
So computers, they take out of the car.
Most of these are for the MDBs, for the new cruisers, and they're going to be locked into the car. They're not going to be mobile. They're not going. No one's able to get them out. But we use the same. We selected these computers specifically because they can be used for a lot of different things. And one of those things is for our captains, who will be able to take them out of the car. So in the case of the captains, our police captains, they'll be able to use them in the car as their MDB. We allow them to remove them from the car and use them on their desk. And so they use that docking station to plug into their desk. And then they also have that as a laptop for use off-site when they're outside the office and outside the car. So so one computer can be used for 3 different purposes. That is why the docks and the DVD players, so they can view videos and whatnot that are part of packages. And this allows us to deploy those. So that's why there's only 5 requested, because we don't need them for 37. We only need them for those captains that are going to have a purpose for using them.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
On the impact, thank you. On the impact, what's a MDB? What does that stand for?
I'm sorry, MDB stands for Mobile Data Browser, which is what it's short for the computer in the car.
So typically, help me out here, because I do ride with the police officers, but I don't ride with the police officers. So what typically would they be looking at on the computer?
Those are used for
The
call
route-
information. There's a call card or a call information, notes from the caller that the call taker puts into the computer. It's
they can see
transmitted to
all of
that
that.
computer in the car. They also use those for running plates, for running criminal information from the car. But they only do those things. They don't really have a whole lot of capability outside of that.
Okay, so you couldn't look at videos from, or access?
No, actually, we have it set up so they cannot.
Okay.
In the cars. And they're specifically designed or configured to not be able to do that because of the bandwidth that's involved. However, the captains, in certain circumstances, they'll be able to use it like any other computer on their desk when they're plugged in, so they would be able to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Sims. Any other questions or comments? Committee members, council members? All right, with that, what's the pleasure on this piece? Consent? Can I get a motion for consent, please? All in favor? Aye. All right. Thanks, you folks. I appreciate it. And once again, congratulations, man. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Our other piece, amending and/or supplementing Title IX General Regulations, Chapter 92, Animals of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Akron and declare an emergency. And I believe we're going to have John Valley, Director of Neighborhood Assistance, and John York, a law department member of the law department. All right. Let's turn it over to you two first. Yeah, grab me one too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Public Safety Committee meeting. This ordinance would do a couple different things. It would change the impoundment disposal fees that haven't been raised in over 20 years to try to offset what our costs are to Summit County Animal Shelter. It also would require a permit for anybody that would have hoofed animals. And the definition of a hoofed animal is like horses, ponies, cows, calves. And it also would regulate beekeepers. We've had a couple requests for permits to do beekeeping in the city of Akron. So we're looking at the application process for that and some other requirements that are included in there as far as setbacks and things like that. And anywhere in there where it says the Director of Health, we're deleting that and we're putting the Department of Neighborhood Assistance in there. So those are the changes that are in Chapter 92, Animals of the Code of Ordinances. Any questions?
Yeah, John, I have a few more. I just want to thank you both for answering my phone call earlier. Let's start with under Section 192.16, impoundment and disposal, 1 through 7. These are the fees that Summit County is charging us, correct?
The increases will reflect the fees that Summit County is currently charging us.
So basically, in the past, let's talk about seizing and delivering. the county would charge us 20, or wait, the county was charging us 40, but our ordinance was 20, so we were losing money, correct?
Let me look at that is correct on seizing and delivery, correct.
So, and like I talked to you on the phone, my biggest concern out of all these are number 5, puppy and a kitten fee. And the reason, I just want to explain myself to my colleagues, is I work with, okay, number 5, I work with animal rescue groups. And let's say one of the rescue groups obviously finds a female that's pregnant and female has 5 puppies. When they take it to the pound, or if the animal warden comes out, they're actually charging them $10 per puppy, huh? Or is it $40? 40.
I would have to get you that information, because looking at the fee structure on the 7 items that I have from Summit County, I don't have a fee for item number 5.
Oh, okay.
And like I stated on the phone call earlier today, we'll go ahead and make sure we
Okay.
get you that information.
Well, that's my biggest concern, and if you don't mind getting that, because, I mean, I could sit here and use 5 different scenarios, seriously, for number 5. But if Summit County is saying, hey, listen, we're charging the city of Akron, you know, I'll go back up to the first one, $20, well, I'm sorry, $40, but really, we're losing money because we haven't increased our city ordinance, then, I mean, I'm okay with this. But I would like some more information in regards to number 5.
And we
So
will go ahead
that's
and
one
get you that
request.
information.
All right. My other request is, or clarification, is throughout the city ordinance here, we only have 2 sections where we actually charge fees, and that's under hoofed animals and beekeeping, correct?
I believe that's true.
Okay.
For permits, when they,
For permits.
because not every animal needs a permit.
Right,
I mean,
right.
dogs are licensed through the county. When somebody owns a dog, we don't charge them additionally for having a dog.
okay.
But for bees and fourth animals, we have certain requirements in the code that have existed in the code for years. So those aren't new sections.
Okay.
But historically, a bee permit has cost $5, and this legislation recommends that it be increased to $50, because Mr. Valley's staff actually goes out and looks at the site to determine it's in a good location pursuant to the ordinance, and that helps them recover the costs of their efforts.
Okay.
The horse application is also $50.
So really, well, it's always been $50 for the hoofed animal, right?
Correct.
Right. So really, the only one we're increasing is the bee one, from 5 to 50. Okay. All right, then one more, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues in case they have any questions. Obviously, John and John, you both have been huge help to me in regards to the one little feeder store I had on Astor Avenue. I want to make sure, moving forward, we never have a problem like that again. So your input, is there any changes that we should really think about in regards to that pet store? Obviously, you know, it's closed down now, they're gone. I think the one guy's in jail now, everything like that. But I just want to make sure before we pass this. Huh? Yeah, sure, okay. She wants some background, so I'll take a few minutes. I've had a business that opened up on Astor Avenue Business District about 2 years ago, and it was a pet store. And the one guy that opened it up got sick and passed away, so they basically found another person to run the store and take it over. Well, this guy comes in and changes the whole concept of the store in regards to selling pet food and bunnies and gerbils and hamsters, birds, fish. He turns it into a feeder store. So now he brings in big pot-belly pigs, huge snakes that I'm sure you can elaborate on the length. Oh, I forgot, Gert Whelms has been involved in this too. Thank you for everything you've done. So this guy was just a nightmare. He was living in the basement, drugs were coming and going. So it was a nightmare for the business district. So you folks have been huge help with working towards that, along with the state and the county. So my question is there anything in here we changed, or should we really think about that in the next week or two if we take time on this?
We did think about this before we brought it to you. We thought about changing the regulations for pet stores to make it more burdensome. But the fact of the matter is, as far as we know, 98% of the pet stores are playing by the rules.
Right.
So why punish them? When you had one bad one that was doing a lot of things bad, that we were able to get to certain things. Like when we pointed out you can't have chickens in your business. They got rid of the chickens. And you know how they got rid of the chickens. They fed them to the snakes. Same thing with the pig.
Fed them to the snakes.
So, and ultimately we were able to let them know that they were under the radar for basically being a nuisance. And the business closed. So that's why this legislation doesn't put additional burdens on legitimate pet stores. There are ways to get at pet stores that don't play by the rules. For one thing, you've got the vicious animal section. I'm sorry, it's referred to as dangerous animals.
Dangerous animals, yeah, 9224.
So certain animals need to be, we define those as dangerous animals, and they can't be in the city unless they're properly registered with the state. For instance, some of those snakes. And we can get at those without additional, going above and beyond what we already have. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers, and brings up another question, and obviously there are a lot of good pet stores in the city of Akron, but do we, or should we look at the possibility of having every pet store, I don't care if 98% of them is good or not, at least file some kind of permit, maybe, because they are a pet store, even if it's a small fee, just to try to track them? No?
I don't know. I mean, it's something that would be possible if council felt that was necessary and a good idea. It could be possible. It could be written in, but I don't know if that's what council wants.
And just to let my colleagues know, this pet store on Astor Avenue, I mean, it started off good. It was across the street from the Firestone Park Library. Imagine the Firestone Park Elementary School. It just became a disaster. And now they're closed, and thank God for that. But, all right, I'm just bringing all these up, and
if I could just add, I don't recall ever getting any other complaints about a pet store or a pet feed store. And I know that was a problem. I know it took some time, but we were able to accomplish the mission and and eradicate the problem.
So now you're saying it's only in Firestone Park. I see what you're saying. No, that's what you. All right. Moving forward, I'll ask my colleagues if they have any questions, but please make sure you get back with me number 5, because that's my biggest concern with that. All right, council members, Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would think if we're going to catch anything, we catch some of these groundhogs. We're going to put in a cage, but I guess that's a horse of a different color. I have a number of questions. I guess the looming question is the fee structure. I mean these are 3 and 4 times the current cost. And I guess I'm a little confused because, some years back, the county and the city's health department kind of like collapsed, right? And so where is the benefit for us? Because everything in here seems like it was the health director, and now it's you all. So I guess I want to know that when you say they're billing us $40 when the current structure is only 20. So I kind of want to know what happened with that and why are we paying, to be honest. The other thing is, I am a friend of urban agriculture, and some of this stuff I see as an entree into small business development, entrepreneurs, particularly the apiaries as it relates to honeybees, and some of the small animal husbandry too. So I hope just as one, it just seems like this was two things. That this fee structure was one thing and the other of it was something else that could have been and should have been possibly handled differently, so that we could have had some weigh-in in some of the legislation part as it relates to animals and particularly those folks who are working in urban agriculture, to have some discussion around some of the things. And so I guess that would be my desire, is to have that opportunity to do that. But these just seem like two different issues.
They all
Land use.
relate to the Chapter 92 dealing with animals in the code. And the hoofed animals and the beekeeping, we've had residents inquire to the Department of Neighborhood Assistance, and our animal control officers have gone out there and met with them. And we discover that the health commissioner is the person that would issue that permit for the one individual over in the second ward that had well over an acre and wanted a permit for the hoofed animals. It would just be so much easier for our residents in the city of Akron that meet the criteria for something like this. Instead of having to deal with the health commissioner, they can get it through the Department of Neighborhood Assistance, through our animal control. And then on the beekeeping, we had residents reach out to us again, asking to inquire about a permit because they knew that we were in the process. I think we had a situation in Councilman Swirsky's ward and a situation in Councilman Kamer's ward, or I believe it might be Ward 5.
No, that's my ward.
Okay. So that's where we included the beekeeper as far as the permit on that one too, because we did not have a permit process for that.
So I just think that some of the folks who are already working in this vineyard, if you will, could have offered some, because I do see urban agriculture as part of the new frontier in the city as a way for small business development, and for people to really feed themselves. So I hope the time that we take will allow us to get kind of like some feedback from those folks as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Fusco, please.
Thank you, Chair. The question basically is, and I know this outlines the rules and such, I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyways. What's the relief? Like, for example, if somebody, say they want to, apiary, is that the term for bees? Say, for example, they would want to do that, and they would be out of bounds, if you will, in terms of this particular portion of the code. What would be their relief?
If they applied for a permit and were denied?
Yes.
Then
Can they go to appeal? Is there that
No,
process?
he'd have the final decision, the Director of Neighborhood Assistance. Now, they could appeal it to the court, but I don't believe they would. This is one the court's going to look at and say, he's just applying the rules.
Gotcha.
So it'd be just like the denial of any other license someone might feel they're entitled to.
But the
They
appeal
could
would be
challenge
just to
it.
the courts then? Gotcha. Yeah, I was just curious if it would go to zoning, if it would go to, if somebody would say, for example, go to the planning department and say, I want this to be zoned for this particular use, if that would be in play or not?
Not that I'm
Almost any
aware
of
of.
these. No?
There might be instances where they also have to comply with zoning, if zoning has, other regulations, but this
Because
was...
we've addressed that before.
Right.
We've
But
had people
what this-
come in for zoning for apiaries.
Yeah, but what this doesn't do is really rewrite any section of the code that didn't exist before. This is just taking regulations that exist in Akron now and moving the enforcement from the Director of Health to the Director of Neighborhood Assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mr. Valley's staff are actually in the neighborhoods.
Gotcha, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Fusco. Councilwoman Keith, please. Did you have a question? Yes, I thought you did.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not sure what some of these titles entail. So if we go to the front page there, under 92.16, seizing and delivering, what exactly would seizing and delivering mean? Don't say pizza.
if we get a complaint or our animal control officers respond and they have to seize an animal, they have to deliver it to the Summit County Animal Shelter.
So that could be any animal?
That could be,
that
correct.
might be harmful to the people around them, okay? And, okay, miscellaneous disposal. Maybe you knew this, I did not. Okay.
That could be any animal disposal fee that the Summit County is charging us when we take animals to the Summit County Animal Shelter.
Okay.
These are fees that we get billed monthly from the Summit County Animal Shelter, and the total average bill that we receive from them is anywhere between $4,000 and $6,500 per month.
So whenever you take an animal to the animal shelter, you're disposing of it, so it's a miscellaneous. So if my cat died, do you come pick it up and that fee is in there? Or a large dog? Or
anything that we would deliver to the Summit
Okay.
County Animal Shelter, they are going to charge us a fee.
all righty.
And the fees are broken down there, those are the 7 categories.
Okay.
In the extraordinary, I do notice in my notes from Summit County that it's rarely used.
It's rarely used.
Correct. And then number 5, which is puppy and kitten fee, and that's the concern that Councilman Kamer and I talked about this morning. And I asked that we take time so I can get him some answers on that, because the county is stating and they're not used. So we need to get a little bit more information on that.
That they're stating that the puppy and kitten fee, they don't really use it?
They're not giving me a cost, put it that way.
Okay.
It just
Oh.
says not used. Seizing and delivery today, Summit County charges $40. Housing per day, the county charges us $30. Dog and cat disposal, they charge us $40. Wildlife disposal, they charge us $40. Miscellaneous disposal, it's $40, and extraordinary is $40, but it's rarely used. I can provide you you probably don't have a copy of what I received on Friday from Summit County.
Mr. Valley, with, I just want to see when these are enacted. So let's say, and here's a good for instance, out at Lake of the Woods, a deer got hit, but it was on the lady's front yard. When she called, she was told if it isn't on city property, they wouldn't come and get it. Okay? So when do we enact these charges? When a resident calls and we deem it to be on city property? Like for instance, the cat one, I said, my cat died in my basement. I mean, I know what I would do with it, but are we getting calls that residents would be calling and asking for this? Or is this on city property or private?
These are items that we are delivering to this, that our animal control officers are delivering to the Summit County Shelter.
So it's under their decision of what's theirs to maintain?
Yes.
And
As far as
okay.
dead deer in the right-of-way, I know that you can call 311. 311 will dispatch that to Public Works. I know in street cleaning, they have a process where they go out and they remove dead animals in the right-of-way, streets, sidewalks, and I mean, quite a few. I mean, I think they're responding to 50 or 60 per week.
Sure.
That's a dead animal out in the right-of-way, and that would be our street cleaning division that addresses them.
And that was on our property, on city property?
City
'cause it's-
property, correct.
Alrighty.
Thank you, Councilwoman Keys. Any other questions or comments? Well, obviously, we're going to take time, but this is where I would like to see the fees decrease in regards to the hoofed animals and the beekeeping. I understand it was $5. I just think going straight up to 50 is a little hefty right now. I'd like to see if we could decrease that down to 35. I mean, that's just my opinion, and I'll make that amendment change if necessary, or whatever I would have to do. I think you guys worked really hard on this. I appreciate it. But I mean, it's not all about making money, but it's making sure we cover our costs, but making sure people are happy with our services. So I don't know if, oh, go ahead, Councilwoman Sims.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I really would, before we get to that point, because I probably would go to 25, but to really talk to some of the folks who are doing this work, which is a part of, I believe, a growing opportunity in our community around urban agriculture. Wesley Ian, first of all, comes to mind. We have him in Northside. He's been doing the bee thing for quite some time. And there are other people. Ms. Julie has done it in the past. Just to hear what they're saying some of the challenges are. And that goes for some of the other animals, too, that could potentially be a part of that whole urban agricultural thing. So before we made any suggestions in terms of amendments, that we just really have that opportunity to talk with them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilwoman. Councilman Swirsky, I know you had your hand up, too.
Advice from experts about some of these animals, or, why is it 25 feet, not 30 feet?
Mr. Swirsky, is your microphone on? There you go.
These are, like I said, these are the costs that the...
No, I'm talking about the distances, I don't know, the costs. I'm glad people raised those. I'm just wondering how why did we determine that chicken have to be 100 feet? I mean, that's what the current law is, right? Why is it 100? Why is it's always, is there any science to any of this, or any expertise involved, or is it just sort of hunches that people, I mean, the bees, why 25 feet? Do we, pot-bellied pig, why is the one pigeon, we can't have that pigeon? Maybe there's reasons for it. Are there certain expertise that went in some of this?
All the changes are in bold print.
Are in what?
In the bold print. And
yeah. No, but I'm asking why did you get some expert advice on some of this? It's kind of hard to know all this.
I honestly cannot answer that question for you at this point in time. But like I said, all the changes are in bold. The biggest change here is,
that's not my
when
question.
we had the gentleman in Mr. Kilby's ward reach out to us, was interested in getting a permit for hoofed animals for his animal. He did meet the 1 acre requirement, and we would have to refer him to the Summit County Health Commission. I'm sorry, the City Health Director, to get that permitting process. So we're just trying to make it easier. But there's quite a bit in Chapter 92, Animals of the Code of Ordinances. There is
like
quite
the
a bit.
Asiatic pigeon, why is, we can't keep that one, but we can keep other pigeons? Is there some expertise behind that? Is that a pigeon that gets disease more, or?
I can't answer that question.
I don't know how anyone could know all this.
Yeah. I mean, the changes that we have are, like I stated, they're in bold.
Yeah,
other
I
than
got
the
that idea. Yeah.
For the hoofed animals and the beekeeping, everything else, and the permit fee, which is changing also. Those are the changes that we are presenting you today.
So John, my question is, to piggyback on what he's saying, is the bee section, the hoof section, who goes out there and actually verifies that, inspects that?
Our animal control officers.
All right, so why don't we do this? I mean, obviously, I know you both respect us taking time on this, and I appreciate that support. Why don't we see if we can get someone next week during public safety to come and just kind of speak for a few minutes, ask a few questions, and we can move forward there. Okay. And so next Monday, even if we don't have legislation, we'll still meet here at 2:15 Public Safety, and you'll get somebody to come and speak about that, and you'll get any answers that we need. So before I Councilwoman Sims?
I was just going to motion for time.
Oh, okay. We have a motion for time. Can I get a
Second.
second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Public utilities in 1 minute.
Just so everybody's aware, I have some food coming before the caucus at 4:15. I have food coming before the caucus at 4:15, so if you want to talk about utilities for 45 minutes, I'm going to be eating.
I think it will go quicker now, after your announcement.
Just one piece of routine legislation we can do real quick in utilities. Okay? I mean,
No, I'm just he's playing cow noises. You're right, sorry.
okay,
Sorry.
Public Utility Committee come to order. I guess Bob Hoke, you're on the committee, right? Let's see. I'm Bruce Kilby. I'm chairing it for Mosley Samples can't be here, so we have Milkovich, Swartzky, Kamer is stepped out, I guess, but he's here. Neil, I'm looking at the wrong, I'm sorry. Okay, Swartzky, Hoke,
You still don't know.
Kilby, we got a quorum. Freeman, is Freeman here? No. Okay, anyways, one piece of legislation, let me see here. Okay, authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee after publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract or contract for upgraded replacement parts for the primary tanks at the city's water reclamation facility and declaring an emergency. Okay, Mr. Luddle, what's this about?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the 24 rectangular tanks we have down at the wastewater plant. And as you recall, we've brought this before you for the last couple of years. We do about 2, sometimes 3 tanks a year with our own staff to save money. So we have done, I think we've got 18 of the 24 complete, and we hope to do another 2 this year. So those parts that are in the existing tanks, they're all metal, and our staff down there converted everything over to a composite type of a plastic, okay? So the sprockets, the chain, the wipers that go to take all the influid across the bottom, and it's been very, very successful because the parts, first of all, don't rust and freeze up. So that's what this is for.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from any council member in the chamber?
Consent's fine.
Is consent okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do I have a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
Okay, with that, all in favor of consent, say aye. Aye. Okay, that's all we have in front of public utilities. Public utilities is adjourned. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to have a housing committee meeting. We have a guest speaker, and there's no legislation. So the lady that is going to give a little presentation just stepped out.
Where's the speaker at?
She just stepped out.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, well, what, oh, here she is. Okay, Housing Committee, you can, ma'am, Mrs. Stokes, you want to sit up here? Come on up here. Okay, we're going to have a Housing Committee meeting here in a minute. One of our members stepped out
Mr. Kilby, you ready to go?
I guess we can go. Councilman Swartzky's a member of the committee, but he'll be right back. Let's see, President for the Housing Committee is Councilman Milkovich, Councilman Kamer, and I'm Bruce Kilby. I'm the chairman of the Housing Committee. We have a guest speaker today, Tori Stokes. It's from an organization called Akron Summit Community Reinvestment Coalition. Okay, let the record reflect that Councilman Swartzky's present. Anyways, there's no legislation. We're just going to talk about this. This was Russ Neal brought this up. I guess you want to say something first, Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm somewhat aware of the work that Ms. Stokes and those on her volunteer committee, citizens who are working. We're all aware that Huntington committed some $20 million to the area, $2 million a year. There's a citizens group that has been working on how to best administer those resources in our community. It's the Akron, they branded as Akron Summit Community Reinvestment Coalition. I believe Ms. Stokes is the chairperson for that committee. I know all of us are trying to identify resources for our neighborhoods. This would be a good community partner for us to understand on how we as council, since we get all the calls and concerns, could find an ally that we could potentially work with to address some of those needs in the community. So thank you, sir.
Okay, Ms. Stokes, you can talk to us about whatever you want related to this important subject.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm a little new at this, so the gadgets. The opportunity to be able to share what the new coalition is doing, we have actually started in 2016, where we have formulated with the national coalition, which is National Community Reinvestment Coalition in Washington, D.C. And they actually heard some of our issues that were going on in our city, and they wanted to be able to have a local presence in regards to some of the community benefits with the lending institutions that we're forming in our communities. What our mission and our purpose is to advocate, facilitate, strengthen economic opportunities, and increase social and business opportunities in our area. We have successfully worked with them for the past 2 years in certain areas, and currently right now what we have accomplished was working with the Summit County Fiscal Office with delinquent taxes. Currently right now we have over 14,000 delinquent taxes, and what we have successfully been able to do is to sit down and look at some of their policies and procedures. We've been able to assist them to understand that when individuals become delinquent, sometimes they don't even look at their mail, and so we needed to do something new to get into their homes to be able to get them to understand that there is a process and there is a plan to be able to bring their their delinquent taxes. We just had a road show, and what we did was the road show with all of our members in the coalition and with the Summit County staff. We had 152 people, and the reason why that was amazing, because the last time we just did the first call, we only had 25. So we had 152 people, and out of those 152, 47 was able to actually sign up for a repayment plan, and we're still working with the others. 800 individuals from this campaign actually went on ahead and signed up for the repayment plan. So that effort helped us to be able to decrease the numbers and to bring more revenue to the city. We're also working with the Summit County Economic Department There are a lot of programs and projects and things that the county and the city are, city are doing that maybe individuals specifically in the low to moderate income neighborhoods are not knowing how to reach those resources or how to get involved with those programs. So we've been instrumental in regards to getting the word out to let them know about these programs. We're working with area lenders and their benefit packages. The benefit packages are lenders who are actually maybe purchasing another bank and they're having another acquisition. And in order for them to be able to be allowed to do that acquisition purchase, the community has a process that they have to buy into before they are approved to be able to buy that bank. So we're involved in that process, and that's where many of the lending institutions have committed over $60 billion to our area. So this is something that we really need to look at and see how we can get them and work together to see how we can get those resources in the way that we want to, opposed to maybe some of the current ways that they're doing it. Our areas of focus is affordable housing, economic development, and employment opportunities. So how can we work with you is probably the question that you're asking. In areas of affordable housing, we have so many different issues. We have the vacant housing, we have the demolition issues, we have the vacant and abandoned homes. And so what we're really working with our members is to come up with a strategy that will assist them in sustaining our housing industry in our communities and to increase safe, decent, and affordable housing options. With our economic development, we're also looking for assisting the small business development. We help with getting with the lenders to be able to get them to understand they need to change some of their products so these things can be possible. And so it helps with our lending opportunities. In our employment opportunities, with our particular housing industry, this is a perfect opportunity to be able to get individuals who have maybe no desire to want to go to college, but they want to learn a trade. And so we can pull this all together to be able to work with the lending institutions, work with the city and the county in regards to pulling together programs that as we're developing and we are rehabbing these homes, we can be able to start opening up some of the trades, the electrical trades, the plumbing trades, and the construction trades. So this is what the coalition does, and we welcome any time that we can be of service to you. Thank you for that opportunity.
Okay, very good, Ms. Stokes. Any questions from committee members? Okay, Mr. Swartzky.
So this relates back to federal legislation that was passed as part of the Community Reinvestment Act. That was 30 years ago?
Yes.
And so the banks are required to provide money to areas that they previously excluded from loans.
Yes, it's one of those things that they will provide new lending packages. So that's their way of being able to say they actually donated or they actually provided money for those sources. So they'll make special loans available for people who otherwise would have gotten denied, but it's going right back to them. So what we have to do is to work with the lenders to get them most people think 60 billion, we can get this contributed to our community. No, we have to work with them and ask them and get them to see the importance of reinvesting back. So we're starting to sit at the table with them to tell them that we do need those products where they're going to give us $20 million to help with construction.
Okay, so who's sitting at the table, actually?
Currently, right now, I am myself and Malcolm Costa sits with Huntington Bank. We have Grady Appleton who's sitting with Key Bank, and we're looking for someone to be able to sit with Fifth Third. I'm sorry, yes.
I'll sit with them if they're giving out money.
Exactly, but unfortunately right now we're going to have to work together to impress upon them the importance, because of course they're going to find it how they're going to get it back. And so we need to come up with more strategic moves so that those sources are in the way that we want them to come back. Because if they commit that $60 billion, we should be the ones making that policy up.
So I got a question. How did they come up with a $60 billion figure?
Well, I have a copy of their benefit packages, and in the benefit packages, they have identified where there are some gaps and some funding needs. And so many of the lending institutions will earmark where many of the money will go, and they have economic development in there. They have, I can't say this word, so don't laugh at me, philanthropic. Yes, they have those funds set aside, but if we're not there to monitor where those funds are going, they're going to play the same games that they've been playing in the past.
So that $60 billion is earmarked for Summit County?
Yes, it is.
For how long of a period of time?
For the next 5 years.
Next 5 years, okay.
Correct.
Any other questions from committee members? Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do want to clarify, when you say 60 billion, that's nationwide?
No, actually.
Are we saying billion with a B or
we're
million with
saying
a
$1 billion. It's for Ohio.
Okay.
And so, it's real clear in the benefit packages where they're actually going to put those funds. Most of the funding is in their lending products that they're going to do.
Well, I just want to speak to, and this kind of goes back to when we were talking about Wells Fargo a way back, and that money that was coming here, making sure that persons that were possibly injured by Wells Fargo are the ones that get those monies that are supposed to redeem folks, that those are the folks that we search to make sure that they receive services first. I say that because, as Councilman Swirsky mentioned, some of this is because it's needed, it's mandated because if they acquire a bank, that's a local bank. Others, as Mr. Swirsky mentioned, that going 30 years back is because of some of their lending practices, like redlining and things of those things. And we've had a lot of education here about institutional practices that unfairly impact areas. I think this is an opportunity for us. Of course, we'll have to learn more. But this is our opportunity to put together a strategic plan to work with our residents to address senior needs, home repair needs, roofing needs. I mean, because this is money that basically is coming back to them because of, one, they acquired our local bank, and others because of maybe some historical practices that took place. So, Mr. Chairman, I know we're going to have to do more follow-up in regards to this, and there's some other, if I could use Mr. Fusco's term, some other moving pieces and parts to this, like our city's land bank and the practices there. But with all the things that we have with housing that's taking up, with Second Chance Village, just the normal foreclosure and distressed property values, the incoming of these tiny homes and new things that people are trying to do, it's important that we partner with everyone that's trying to address the housing need, and this is definitely a key piece. Now, Ms. Stokes, you mentioned something about being a member of, what's that organization again, that national organization?
National Community Reinvestment Coalition.
Okay. Now, presently, I don't know if the city is a member.
Not at this time.
The city's not a member. I would think at a time for council, we need to look at, just like we have memberships on other things that meet our chairs, definitely either our housing chairperson or our economic development chairperson, we should have a membership to be a part of that group. Somebody representing council so we can get firsthand information.
Can you take it on yourself, Mr. Neal, to find out how we apply for membership and how much it costs? And then
yes, sir.
Maybe we can talk about that at a later date.
Mr. Fusco looks like he may.
Okay, Mr. Fusco?
Thank you. No, I'm just curious, and I'd like, as Mr. Neal mentioned, like a deeper conversation in terms of leveraging perhaps, we have community development block grant funds. And obviously that'd have to be budgeted and set aside and so on and so forth. But this is truly what, we get these external funds into our city. There's workforce development, that's the economic development side. There's just a number of things that could possibly blossom from this. And I want to tell you, this lady here is awesome. I know Marilyn Keith and I worked with her on somewhat of a similar program many years ago, and some of you other council people who've been here for a while worked on that as well, and that was Save the Dream Ohio, right before it was eliminated by the state. And we actually worked and saved people their houses, and they're still in their houses today. And you did a great job with that, and we appreciate all your effort on that. And so an excellent proven track record of success, and this is something I think absolutely council ought to get involved with and learn a little bit more and see how we can work together to grow this. Thank you, Chairman.
Councilwoman Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to echo the sentiments of Councilman Fusco regarding your work, Sister Torre, with Mustard Seed and all that you've done to educate our community. And so so grateful that you are chairing this committee. The two things, I was glad to hear that Malcolm is playing some role here, because I think there's real opportunity as far as youth build is concerned to really start to reactivate that kind of work. There's some young folks down in the Summer Lake community that are doing carpentry kind of things starting in high school, and have created an entity there called Build Corp that I think is just an entree into providing some bona fide workforce development experiences for young people. So I'm really pleased about that. So on the national level, I guess is my question. We have here locally, we have a land banking. On the national level, are they looking at plans for particularly urban communities, and are they able to bank land? Are they doing land banking themselves? And is that a plan for this local entity to potentially do that as we devise plans for the urban core around housing?
Yes, I spoke with the individual who is responsible for capital towards development, and he wants to come into this area. So we're now looking at some of the possible properties and projects that could be bought here, and he's going to bring the capital to be able to, and he's with the coalition, the national coalition.
Okay, is there any, Councilwoman Amobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much. I think what I was most excited about is the different approach that you talked about. There's 152 people knocking on doors or whatever you need to do, because that's the level of work that people need, because they truly don't understand a lot of this financial stuff. And I call myself a fairly educated person, and I need a lot of help understanding it too, because there are so many resources that I hear about, and if people can pull all those things together, we can help so many more people. Because even our lead removal program here, and the additional resources we have to help seniors and other folks with some of their housing needs, if we all kind of work together some kind of fashion so that your program can do a little here and that program can fix this, and even the Summit County Health Department, I mean, we're very fortunate in this county that we have 2 lead removal, $3 million grants. But I don't know how they talk to each other and if they work together, but a lot of folks don't know about them. And that is part of the problem. But I think is what you just talked about is what is needed. We just can't put out brochures and announcements on the radio or whatever. We need to go knock on doors and say, your taxes are behind. Do you understand it? And do you understand how to correct this? Because a lot of people don't. And, you know, the more I understand about this housing issue and people losing their homes, and you can go to these sheriff sales, some of these homes can be purchased in $20-some thousand, $30-some thousand. And like you said, a payment plan can be developed. And to go to some of these homes and see how people have just left their homes with all of their materials in them, then you really see that folks are really hurting. And some of these houses are so intact. And I've just been learning a lot about that side lately. but I really love your approach and what you're trying to do, because that is what is needed, is that kind of detailed work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Stokes, thanks for coming in and
Thank
filling
you
us in
all.
on this. Appreciate your time. Sorry we were late. We were running behind schedule, so. Mr. Neal?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I will follow up based on your request. Well, I'll follow up and then for me. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else to come in front of the Housing Committee? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Council members, just a reminder, there is food in the conference room right behind Chambers.